Hello everyone and welcome to maybe the last video I will ever make with my glasses on because I'm getting LASIK tomorrow. We are ranking these superhero projects of 2025. There were quite a few because some of you refused to acknowledge that Marvel's quality over quantity announcement was bullshit. They announced the same release schedule we've been on for over a decade, but here we go. Starting in dead last with Marvel Zombies. This was a hot mess of nothing. The plot was barely there, and honestly, the animation style took you out of the story approximately every 30 seconds because everyone looked the same and nobody looked like their characters. I had to really listen, and I recognized Kamala by Amon's voice, not by the fact that she looked anything like Kamala Khan, because she didn't. She looked like a little white bitch, first of all, so I was really confused as to who the fuck that was supposed to be. The ending was clearly rushed and underdeveloped. No one thought this story out. This project was not one that anyone was passionate about. There was no thought, no love, absolutely no indication that a single person gave a shit about this project and what was being put out. Dead last, there was nothing enjoyable about this series. Sorry. One step up from that, and it was a pretty big step, the gap between last place and second to last is pretty huge, is Captain America Brave New World, and this has nothing to do with Sam. Please hear me when I say this has nothing to do with Sam as Captain America. Unfortunately, it feels like no one told Marvel that Sam was Captain America. This movie was mostly about trying to remember details of the Hulk movie that no one gave a shit about from almost 20 years ago. They didn't give Sam Captain America's theme music, because just by the way, that song that plays whenever Cap's on screen, or whenever Cap has a big moment, or whenever the Avengers have a big moment, it is not the Avengers theme song, it is Captain America's theme. Not Steve Rogers' theme, Captain America's theme. Marvel sent a very clear message in not including that piece of composition that they clearly had the rights to and could have plugged in wherever the fuck they wanted. By not using that music, they sent a very clear message to the audience about what they think about Sam Wilson being Captain America. And it's icky and gross, and I hate it. They spent way too much time on Red Hulk. We should have been focusing our energy on Isaiah Bradley and Sam trying to undo the wrongs of the past. And getting the general public, and more importantly, the US government, to see Sam as Cap. It was a wildly disappointing movie, and we know why it was bad and not handled as well as Chris Evans' Captain America's. Because that was safe for Guardians of the Galaxy. Of the big original three, that was the only trilogy worth watching as a whole. It's very clear why they dropped the ball. And it's extremely frustrating, because why bother making him Cap over Bucky when that was also an option if you weren't going to treat him like Captain America? Why? Why pass the ball just to rip the field out from under him? Shoving it back down. I'm very sorry. I digress. The movie sucked. And it was not Sam's fault, and it was not Anthony Mackie's fault. Racism is why the movie sucked. Just above that is Thunderbolts. So here's the deal. There's nothing I hate more than a movie that has really great potential but ends up sucking. I love the mental health angle. I loved centering the film around Yelena. I think those were great decisions. I think the problems mostly came from structure. Also partially from having too many people in the core cast. The reason the Avengers worked was because we saw all of those people in different movies first. There was nobody new added to the mix. And they were all fully fleshed out characters first, save for maybe Hawkeye. We didn't get really a lot of background on Hawkeye before we saw him in the Avengers. We know some about Ghost. We knew very little about Taskmaster, who you killed off in the first, 10 minutes. That was a stupid, dumbass decision. John Walker didn't need to be there at all. I did say this when the cast was first announced. I had my reservations with how the interactions between Bucky and John were going to be handled, and I was 100% correct in my concern. They not only did not acknowledge the two of them and their history and baggage, but John was sort of useless entirely. Like when Jon Snow was brought back from the dead and walking around and doing a whole lot of nothing, that's what John Walker was in this movie. He was a whole lot of nothing. I think we should have cut him out of the cast. Also Taskmaster, since they wasted her anyway. And honestly, Ghost wasn't necessary. If it had just been a story about Alexei and Yelena reconnecting and trying to find a new purpose together and decide to build a team in order to forge a family, and that's how they find Bob, and then Bob, with his powers that he can't control yet, ends up helping Yelena work through her helplessness, it would have been a much better movie. It would have strengthened the mental health angle. It would have strengthened the familial angle between Yelena and Alexei that they keep trying to force on us that didn't make any fucking sense in the first place. They had the right idea, but horribly wrong execution. It could have been so much better than it was. It was very choppy. Honestly, if I just rearranged pieces of the movie, I could make it 10 times better. Everyone's gonna hate this and I don't care. Smack dab in the middle, we've got Daredevil. Look, it's a great show. My sticking point, however, is sexism, so it drags it right down the list. The fact that they chose to continue to butcher Vanessa Fisk's character beyond repair is unforgivable and inexcusable. She is unrecognizable from her comic book counterpart. But in the original series, yeah, it was shit then too, and it was also super easy to fix when they made the move from Netflix. It was easy to fix her character. They chose to double down instead, and that means I get to bully them for their horribly sexist, dumbass, misogynistic depiction. Destroying a single character beyond recognition, and that single character being one of two women that are actually in the show, and the other woman being the girlfriend and thus a plot device, isn't a good look. You're lucky it got this far up the list, actually. Right above it, Ironheart. I don't understand the hate for this. I really don't. I mean, I do. It was good. It was funny. Riri is a badass, and you know what? I do understand why, and I think we all understand why it got hate. I still don't understand the hate, though. I understand. Yes, racism confuses me in 2026. Sexism confuses me in 2026. Pull it together. I don't think the MCU is going to bother following up with it. I don't think there will be a second season. I don't even think we're going to see Riri on the big screen anytime soon. But it was a great self-contained show. Right above that, Eyes of Wakanda was brilliant. It gave us the exact amount of episodes it needed to. It was such a brilliant way to tell Wakanda's story while weaving them into the history of the rest of the world and exposing them to the rest of the world. They very easily could have made the episodes fully isolated like an anthology series, but they tied them together so well. It was badass and it was beautiful to look at. These top two switched back and forth for me so many times. Let's just call them tied. Fantastic Four was everything I wanted it to be and more. All casting reservations I had were 100% unfounded and I was completely wrong. I've never been so happy to be incorrect. I didn't love Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. When that casting came out, I went, that's not for him. But he was the perfect casting choice because Reed Richards, I think some of us forget, is kind of a dick. I'm not talking about the original movies. I am talking about the comic books. Some of y'all want to defend Reed Richards to your last breath, and that's fine. That's your prerogative. Do what you will. But he's kind of an asshole. And Pedro Pascal's puppy dog eyes help soften him a bit and made him more sympathetic. Vanessa Kirby could not have been more perfect. Sue saving the day was the only thing that made sense. She is the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four. I think we all need to start getting on board with that. And in several continuities of the comics, she was the leader. And it is canon and said in fiction by Reed Richards' face that she's a better leader than Reed. So, let's all get over it together. And the choice to center it around the idea of family was the most correct choice they could have made, because that is the whole purpose of the Fantastic Four, is that they are a family first and superheroes second. So the conflict around whether or not to give the baby up, her straight up giving birth on a spaceship, all of that made perfect sense. And then for her to sacrifice herself for her family, and then for her baby to bring her back. Beautiful full circle, great writing moment. Also super, super important to the future of the MCU and the Fantastic Four, because those of you who don't know, the Richard's child is so unbearably powerful, it's hilarious. It's almost funny how much power that kid possesses, and his relationship with his mother is a huge driver for like 90% of their storylines. So they really did set some good shit up from the comics. And then Superman, of course. Anyone who thinks this is a bad movie, and even worse, a bad adaptation of Superman, is not only wrong, they're profoundly, painfully stupid. This movie was incredible. It was Superman. It felt the most like a comic book movie, like a comic book film has felt in a long time. David was such an incredible casting choice. The way they portrayed Lois was fucking perfect. I loved that it wasn't an origin story and it dropped us in the middle of the action. And Lois was never a damsel in distress. In fact, she went to go find and save him. We got an appearance from Millie Alcock as Supergirl, and she's going to be incredible. I can't wait for her movie this year. It was a perfect superhero movie. I had my reservations about Nicholas Hoult as Lex also. And this comes from a place only of Smallville is my favorite adaptation of Superman, and no one can touch Michael Rosenbaum. Michael Rosenbaum is the best Lex Luthor that has ever been committed to film, and I don't think he will ever be dethroned. Nicholas Hoult did a great job, though. Yeah, it was a perfect movie. If you like Superman, you liked the Superman movie. If you don't understand Superman, then maybe you didn't like it.